singing holy, holy, holy are you, Lord. Waiting my whole life for that day. Until then I live to hear you say, well done, my good and faithful one. Welcome to the place where you belong. Well done, my beloved child. You have run the race and now you're home. Welcome to the place where you belong. Well done.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Weaver, and I am the hospice chaplain who had the privilege of spending a few special moments with Bobby over the last few weeks, and I'm honored to be here today. On behalf of the family, I'd like to thank you for being here and your support that you are providing just by your presence in their life right now, and being here today is more than you may imagine. We offer our condolences to the Noble family and to all who were close to him and who are feeling the pain of losing him. I want to begin this service with prayer, as the scripture in Psalm 46 tells us. God is our refuge and a strength, a very present help in trouble. So let's go to him in prayer and seek his strength and his help. Dear Heavenly Father, we gather today to remember the precious life of Bobby Noble. Thank you for each moment and memory that we have had with him, and yet we also mourn, for his life was a gift and he will be missed deeply. So we turn to you, Lord, asking you to bring comfort and strength to each one here. We pray that your peace and presence will be richly felt this morning and in the hours and the days and the weeks ahead. We pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. We, because of the time and all the friends that Bobby had, we don't have time to open the mic to everyone, but we're going to take a few moments and let Miss Rosita and maybe a couple other family members share some thoughts they have about Bobby. So I'd ask you to just enjoy that right now. First we thought she had to climb all the way up there, but now we have a good tech here,
good.
so.
Because nobody would see me from behind.
There you go.
I'm so short.
How's that?
Okay. Well, I just wanted to tell everybody my husband was an extraordinary man. Most of you know Bobby from the last 45 years, but few of you know him from before that. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about his life. Bobby was born in post-Depression year 1938 in Blakely, Georgia. He was born to a very poor family. His father worked at whatever he could find. His mother worked picking cotton. Bobby was the oldest child of Frank and Ann. Therefore, he helped his mother pick cotton. To bring money to the household, he had also a paper route and sold boiled peanuts on the side of the road. When Bobby was 11, his father was killed in a very tragic work accident. Anne took her 3 living sons and daughter to live in Columbus, Georgia, in search of a better job. She found a job at a mill working 60 hours a week. The children went to school, and Bobby watched over them after school. He cooked dinner for them, which was most of the time French fries, and more French fries. As soon as Bobby was able to, he quit school, 7th or 8th grade, I think. He got a job pumping gas at a filling station. Rebar workers from a construction job at Fort Benning would come to the gas station. Bobby noticed that these workers had a lot of cash in their wallets. So Bobby decided he was going to ask for a job. So he talked to the foreman, and they laughed at him. They said, "This is a job for real men, not for kids." Bobby continued to pester the boss until one day he gave in, said okay to Bobby. On Bobby's very first day in construction, he had a terrible accident, similar to his dad's accident. He was crushed between a truck and a crane. He spent 6 months in the hospital. He was told he would never do physical work again. This was devastating news to him. No physical work and no education. For any ordinary man, this would have completely destroyed them. But Bobby was not an ordinary man, he was extraordinary. He had an incredible will to succeed. He worked very hard at getting strong again. As soon as he could, he was knocking at the door of the construction site again. They hired him again just because they felt sorry for him. Bobby's hard work and high work ethics soon paid off. He became foreman and was in charge of many jobs from Louisiana to Miami. The company got jobs in Puerto Rico, and off he went to Puerto Rico. When he finished those jobs, he came back to the mainland. His wheels started spinning about the opportunities in Puerto Rico. He returned to Puerto Rico and started his own rebar construction company, Southeast Steel. This is when Bobby and I met. I was having lunch at a cafeteria near my work. Bobby would come to lunch at the same place. One day, he approached me and said, "Can you pass me the hot sauce?" And the rest is history. Bobby became very successful in Puerto Rico. He built many landmarks that still stand today. We added 3 children to the other 3 that Bobby had previously. But then crime was getting bad in Puerto Rico, and a lot of people were leaving the island. Bobby decided to move back to the mainland. Talking to his brother David, which lived in Leesburg, David told him of this boat business in Leesburg, the anchorage, that was for sale. We purchased the anchorage and named it Noble's Anchorage Marine. Bobby made a success of the dealership, selling in 1 month what the anchorage was selling in 1 year. The business grew and grew, and now it's a multi-million-dollar business. Thanks to Bobby's hard work and natural instinct for business, he came in contact with Johnny Morris. Johnny was also starting his business, a little business known today as Bass Pro and Tracker Boats. Bobby and Johnny became friends, and they helped each other as they grew their businesses. We have the honor of having Johnny Morris here with us today. I can go on and on about Bobby, but we are limited to time. In conclusion, Bobby was a man of principle, strength, and determination. He loved his mother and his children. He loved me. And this is the man that I fell in love with, an extraordinary man. So now you know a little bit about where Bobby came from. I'd like Johnny Morris to say a few words. Bobby, just adore him, and he helped us through our business life. So, Johnny, please.
Thank you, Rosita. And thank you for sharing things about our friend that I didn't know everything you shared, but none of it surprises me, knowing a man of such character. And I was coming here today. Well, I was up on the way up in North Florida in the St. Johns River, stopped on the way here, and I got up before daylight. I wanted to get me a sport coat and get more dressed up, but every shop I went to, they weren't open or didn't have a sport coat, so my apologies. But I was thinking my favorite quote about fishing of all time is from Ernest Hemingway. It just said, Ernest Hemingway said, "In a lifetime spent fishing, I've come to realize it's not the big fish that you catch, but the people that you meet and the friends that you make along the way that matter the most." And like many of you, and you, Rosita, I feel so blessed in my life to have met Bobby. And just a few sideline stories that are always on my mind. Rosita talked about us starting off, so we started to sell these boats out of our catalog, Bass Tracker. I get this call from Bobby Nobles. I don't know Bobby, but I'd heard about him, and being a pretty savvy merchant and having these boat dealerships. Well, Bobby, I met him with another friend, Charlie Camel, fishing buddy, and Bobby and Rosita were our very first dealer for tracker boats in America. And so to me, it was like he didn't know what he was getting into. Neither did Rosita, because we weren't organized at all. I mean, we didn't have a dealer program. We didn't know what we didn't know. But Bobby was so highly regarded in the whole marine industry that many other dealers around the country, when Bobby did something, people took notice, and when he signed on to be our boat dealer, many other dealers took note of that, and they said, well, if Bobby thinks enough a tracker to sign up, then this must be something good. And so sure enough, a lot of dealers followed Bobby. Bobby, his family had been one of the top, not only tracker dealers, White River dealers, but just marine dealers, many times voted as one of the top marine dealers in the USA. And Bobby and his family, some have been on our dealer advisory council and just guided us through many things. And I come here today for so many people in our company and fellow dealers that just thank the world of your family. And, you know, of all business, Bobby was, he didn't like to lose, he liked to win, he liked to sell stuff, but more than anything else, he loved his family. He loved you guys. And his family I drove by the shop on the way here, but he's just so proud of all of you. And very proud to be Bobby's friend. And God bless you and your family. God bless Bobby. Wonderful, wonderful man.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sharon Nobles. I'm the youngest of Dad's 6 kids. So much of what's good in me I got from my dad. I stand tall, I speak my mind, I chase my dreams, and I believe family is the most important thing in this life. Well, now that Dad is gone from this earth, I will forever be reminded of him when I look at both my daughters' blue eyes. And every time I say my husband's name, which just happens to be the same name as Dad, Bobby Lee. I'll never eat a boiled peanut without thinking of Dad. I'll never drink a dirty martini without thinking of my dad. and I'll never listen to a Johnny Cash song without thinking of my dad. I promised my dad that I would always do my best to make him proud of me and our last name, and the Nobles' legacy continues with our dad in our hearts, with him guiding us from above. I'll always love you, Dad, your baby.
Hello. For those of you that don't know, I'm Sheila Nobles Cooley, and this is my husband, Chris Cooley. Daddy was such an amazing man with such a large heart. Maybe that's because he was a Valentine baby, and he always took care of our family, close or extended, near or far. I have learned so much from him. Some of his favorite sayings and life lessons were, "The early bird catches the worm." He did not like to be late, and he especially did not like it if any of us made him late. And he was always the first one to work. Don't put off tomorrow what you can do today. The worst they can say is no. A penny saved is a penny earned. I still can't walk by a penny on the ground without picking it up. And he always told me it is better to have a lot of good friends than one best friend. We all could learn from these lessons. He didn't know a stranger and always said the more the merrier. It would drive my mom crazy when he would invite extended family or friends to small family functions. She would say, "Doesn't he know we don't have enough food for all these people?" He had such a strong work ethic, which started as a young boy providing for his family. From picking cotton and peanuts, to building the Tampa Skyway Bridge, to owning a multi-million-dollar marine business. This allowed him to provide us with so many opportunities. Although he worked a lot, he enjoyed his family. We never knew when we were going to go on vacation. It all depended on how business was going. There was a few times he would come home from work and say, "All right, we're leaving tomorrow for a month." No planning, just on a whim. His heart grew even larger and softer with each grandchild. He would refer to Anna, Mackenzie, and Abby as the first batch, and Chloe, Rosie, and Elena as the second batch, as if they were sweet little cookies. I am Daddy's little girl. I never really understood why I was so close to Dad, while Robert and Sharon were so close to Mom. I always felt such a bond with him. A few years ago, I had an aha moment, and I remembered when I was an infant. I had become very sick and was hospitalized. Mom stayed home with Robert, and Daddy stayed with me in the hospital and nurtured me. That's when our bond was formed for life. On my wedding day, Daddy told me I would always be the peach of his eye and that he would love me forever. I will love you forever too, Daddy. I miss you terribly, it hurts. Goodbye, Daddy, for now, until we meet again.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us for celebrating Bobby's life today. As Sheila mentioned, Bobby loved a large crowd, and he would have been very happy to see each and every one of you today. Bobby had the ability to make everyone feel special. No matter how he encountered them, whether it was an unexpected phone call out of the blue, a small gift from Russell Stover's, a box of sausage from southern Georgia, or just his warm greeting and that beautiful smile. He always made you feel special. This is the one trait I always admired about him. I've had the opportunity to know Bob for the past 30 years, and I've toiled with what exactly to say today. We shared countless times and travels across the globe, and during these times, we had the opportunity to share some wonderful stories and some very deep conversations, usually over a big steak and a martini. The common theme of these talks, though, were his love for his family, his wife, and his 6 kids. Bob worked very, very hard to maintain his family, as we've seen from the pictures and the gathering today, against the pressures of his business and serving his customers. As time went on, he shifted an increasing amount of focus to that family, especially being there with his grandchildren. And in the end, his family is his lasting legacy. Bob, you taught me a great many. You taught me a great many lessons over my years. And you gave me the greatest gift of all, your beautiful daughter. So that we may continue to build on this legacy. Thank you. I love you.
Good morning. My name is Susan Nobles. I am Bobby's 3rd daughter from the 2 oldest, Debbie and Kathy. And although this is a sad day for us, I would like to take a moment for all of us to remember how important he made us feel when we were with him. I know that although I didn't spend a lot of time with him, when I was with him, he made me feel very special, and I will always treasure that. His smile lit up the day. To anybody that knew him, he had the best smile ever. And I know that we're running short of time, so I think he knows that we all love him in our own special way, and I know that for each of us 6 kids, we were all special to him in a very particular way. So, Dad, this is Susita, your whiskey-drinking, cigar-smoking daughter. From Puerto Rico. That's the way he always, cigar-smoking Puerto Rican daughter. I will always love you, Dad. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. I'm Kathy, daughter number 2. There's a long train of us. I can see by looking out here, Dad had a lot of people that loved him. He would want me to give you all a big hug, because that's just what he did. He loved people, and he loved his family. And I'm sure that I feel his presence here today in all of us. So I know that he'd be happy to see all of your faces here today. I'm sure you all have great stories to tell about Dad. Buddy, I've been talking to stories I've never heard before, so share them with us today when you see us. We'd love to hear those stories, and I'm sure Dad would want you to share them. Dad was one of a kind and bigger than life, wasn't he? He never met a stranger in all his life, I don't think. And he always had to make a deal or a sale. He's the best wheeler and dealer on the earth, and he could do it better than anybody I ever met in my life. He sure could. And he was extremely proud of what he had accomplished, and he wasn't afraid to show it or say it, and we were all proud of him too. My dad had very high expectations of me when I was little, at a very young age, and I was this little tomboy. He always knew I could help him with anything that he had to do. That was when Robert was little and I was his little boy. And I embraced it. That was just who I was, and he loved it. I could especially attend to his wounds when he would cut himself with a chainsaw, which he did more than once, and had him cut his calf. He'd scream for Kathy, and I'd come out there, take the hose, and fix him up. But what I didn't know is that would prepare me to be a nurse later in life. And that was because of him. So I embraced that part of my life. When my husband and I bought a Christmas tree farm many years ago, and my dad called me up one day and he said, "Girl, I spent my life trying to get the people off the farm, my family off the farm, and there you go back to the farm." And we just laughed about it. But he knew that was my thing. I was his country girl, and I was his farm girl, and we were all okay with that. So that was a great memory, what I share with my dad. He wasn't a religious man, and I recently revisited a conversation I had with him a few years ago, and about spirituality, and I explained to him in a way that I thought we'd both embrace, and I told him to see the universe as energy, and that energy never disappears, and that one's own spirit is just that, light and energy. And I felt like his sister, my Aunt Frances, was one of the biggest lights in our lives. And she came down in her big light and took him with her at the end. I know that in my heart. So I believe this. Everything that made up my dad is still here with us today. He's in us. He's among us. He'll always be here with us. I am my father's daughter. I feel his strength, his independence, his determination, and even his adventurous side. I will live on in my father's energy within me forever. I miss you like crazy already, Dad. Love you.
I don't even know how to begin this. I'm the firstborn. My father was my first Valentine. I started typing this early this morning, but for some reason my computer just decided not to print it. My dad, the man, the legend. As I woke up this morning trying to figure out just what I wanted to say about this man who was always will be my father and my dad and my friend. The sun was shining this morning because my dad wanted me to know that the sun was not out just for me, but for everyone. Today is not for me, he said. Today is for all of you. You have breath. You are breathing. You have a heartbeat. Do not ever take that for granted. just 12 days ago, 12 short days ago, which seems a lifetime now, Larry and I were able to take my dad out for one last time. And it was the coldest day of the year by far. I said, Daddy, are you sure you want to go out? He said, yes. So we put beanies on him and his parka and sweaters and double pants and socks. And I said, are you cold? No, I'm not cold. I'm happy to be out. And he was happy to be out. He truly was happy to be out. I had been sick with the COVID for almost 3 weeks prior to that, so it didn't matter. I'd call my dad 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day, just so he could hear my voice, so that he could have that connection with me. I said, Daddy, you know I can't come get you because I'm sick again. He said, okay, well, you know where I am. I said, I know where you are, Daddy. You don't worry about that. I don't know where I am, so how do you know where I am? I said, I always keep track of you, Dad. I have a GPS. I know how to get a hold of you. I'm in the same place, just waiting for you and Larry to come get me. I said, okay, Dad, just as soon as we can get there, we're going to get there. I believe with all my heart that each and every one of us have a purpose here on this earth. And my purpose, for whatever God's reason is, I've been a caregiver for more times than I can count. But this time being a caregiver, even though Dad was in a memory care, this time it really meant something to me. And my purpose, I believe, was to take care of my dad, even though he was in memory care. It was my purpose, I think, to bring just a little bit more happiness and a little bit more joy to Dad's life, the last few months, the last few years of his life. I know, and each and one of you who know me know that I had a off and on again relationship with my dad because I know that I didn't make him proud at the beginning. But I hope he knows now. I hope he knows now, Dad, that these last few years I did everything in God's way to make you happy and to bring a smile to your face. And I believe that's true because every time I saw you, your eyes would just light up. Now, getting to the part where he's a legend. Dad wasn't an extremely famous or notorious person, but he was a legend in his own right mind, in his own right. In his particular field, and that was the marine or the boating business, he was known as the living legend. People would come to me that even didn't know me, didn't even know Dad. I would mention Noble's Marine, they'd say, oh, is Bobby Nobles your father? And I'm like, yeah, he's my father. Well, I've heard of him from Georgia or Mississippi or somewhere. I'm like, it is a small world. He, as my sisters, and my brother, and whoever else has spoke before I got here, because I won't go into that anymore, but he was larger than life. He gave 110% of whatever he did. As my sister Kathy said, he was the first one to get to work and the very last one to leave work. And my little sister Sharon is doing it now. He started out as a young boy selling boiled peanuts. Come get your hot peanuts, hot boiled peanuts. He sold newspapers. He picked cotton. His father died very tragically, so Dad had to quit school, and he became the man of the family. And he did whatever he had to do to make sure that his family, my grandmother, which was my heart also, and his siblings had food on the table. It didn't matter. It wasn't beneath him to do whatever he had to do. He did it. And then he married at a very young age. And that marriage wasn't meant to last. For whatever fate had in store, it wasn't meant to last. But he did have 2 daughters. And that was my sister Kathy and I. And so many people, and I've heard so many stories, and that Frances was here, she would tell you. So many people begged him, and they just said, Bobby, you need to give these girls up. You need to put them in an orphanage. You can no longer take care of them. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. Whatever it takes, I will keep my family together. And he did. My sister and I are still here. So for a while, we had to live with my grandparents, and he gave all his earnings to my grandparents to take care of us. It didn't seem to matter what he had to do, what kind of job he had to take. He was successful in whatever he did. He found that construction was something that he thought was a good fit for him at the time. And then he decided that he wanted to be his own boss, which he did, and he excelled at. He was on top of the world. Now remarried twice more times. He had 6 children. Me, myself, Debbie, Kathy, Susan from a second marriage, Robert, Sheila, and Sharon from the 3rd marriage, which lasted 54 years, which was his life partner until he died. His construction business, Southeast Steel Corporation, was still quite doing very well, but he wanted something different in life. So he bought Nobles Marine, the boating, I think it was called the Anchorage at the time. Johnny Morris became a very good friend of Dad's, though I don't think I've met him but one time. I think Johnny became Dad's mentor because he literally was like a sponge. Whatever Johnny Morris had to say to him, it soaked into Dad. He just wanted to learn everything about the business. My dad loved meeting new people and helping anyone that needed help, though he was known for being very sociable and generous, with his great big smile and his bear-like hugs. Not to mention those sparkling blue eyes of his. It was no wonder that people loved to be around him. And I was blessed to have given Dad his very first granddaughter, Amberly Michelle, who is now also in heaven. And then my sister gave him the only grandson, which in turn, Jeffrey turned around to give him his only great-grandson. Robert gave him 2 more daughters, Mackenzie and Chloe. Sheila gave him 2 more daughters, Abby and Anna. And then Sharon, the youngest daughter, gave him yet 2 more daughters, Rosie and Elena. Yes, his family was full of beautiful girls, and 1 grandson, Grant, and 1 great-grandson. Dad loved every one of his children, and he did not take that lightly. He was a hard man at times. Sometimes he did not know how to show his emotions. But toward the end, I know that Dad knew that each and every one of us loved him with all of our hearts. And I'm so glad and I'm blessed that I was able to be there as much as I could be there. Dad I loved you, and I love you, Daddy, more than any amount of words can show or ever be written. But I pray that toward the end I made you proud and happy. You will forever and forever remain in our hearts. Your work here on earth is done now, Dad. Now go and rest and sing with the angels that are all up there in heaven with you. Ha ha. Now you are the legend up there in heaven.
Hello, everybody. I'm Daddy's only boy, Robert Nobles. He did teach me how to become a gentleman, so I had to let all the ladies come first. When Dad met Mom back in the late 60s, he told my mother, he says, I have 3 girls, 3 kids. I don't want another kid. Well, Mom says, how about if I promise you a boy? And he's like, well, if you can promise me a boy, then, you know. So, guess what? Ta-da! So, I'm here. Daddy was my hero. He will always be my hero. I love that man more than I can ever express. We did have a close bond because I was his only son. We had a house full of estrogen and not enough testosterone. And if you see by all the granddaughters, we all have females in our family. And I'm so proud that I got to be his boy. And I'm gonna miss him deeply. I really am. He was a staple in this community, and I'm gonna make him proud. And I know he was proud to have me as his boy. And I will forever, forever, ever cherish him in my heart. And as everybody can see the wreaths here, red wreaths, you know, for my sisters. I have the white ribbon down there, and it makes me proud. Thank you, Mom, for what you did. But I didn't write anything. It's just this is coming from the heart, and I'm going to miss my daddy a lot. He meant a lot to me. And thank you, everybody, for coming here and showing the love for my father. It means a lot to me. And thank you again. I love you, Daddy.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to invite Miss Becky to bring us another song.
I can only imagine what it will be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? To my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak it all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when that day comes and I find myself standing in the sun. I can when all I will do is forever worship you. I can only imagine.
Thank you, Becky. Someone once said that there are two primary reasons for a funeral service. One being to remember the loved one that was lost, the memory and the celebration of the life, which is what we're doing today with Bobby, as the family just did an amazing job of helping us do. And secondly, it's to review our own lives, because death teaches us that life is fleeting. And there, when we examine our own lives, we can better understand and really know what we're living for personally. I live near Lake Harris, and I often in the morning I take a walk, and when the bass fishermen are taking off, it's very calm and all the fog is on the lake. There's a cloud over it, and when they start up those outboards, it just kicks out a little bit of exhaust, and it kind of settles on the surface of the water. It's interesting. You sit and you watch it, but then all it takes is a brief wind, just a gust coming off the lake, and it's gone. The mist, it's gone. The mist, the smoke, the fog, it's just carried away as if it weren't there. And the book of James tells us that our lives are like a vapor, and in a moment they're carried away by the wind, and that's a reminder of the brevity of life. I don't need to remind any of you of that today. As we say goodbye to Bobby, the emptiness is real, and that scripture is painful. I do want to share something that I think it'll warm your heart. When I met Bobby, it was before he was on hospice, and he was in a memory care unit. I continued to walk by the area where he'd have his lunch, and the staff were taking care of him, and I just saw this just gentle, elderly man sitting in the corner, smiling, talking to people here and there, and he had a stocking cap that said Mercury on it, Mercury outboards, of course. And I kept seeing that. I thought, boy, I just need to connect with him. So eventually one day, maybe this might have been 3-4 months ago, I walked over and I went up to him, and I knew he was in memory care, so I wasn't sure what his cognition was. So as I usually do, I tried to connect, and I thought, well, I'm going to impress him. So I said, sir, how you doing? And he just gave me a smile and shook my hand, and I said, I used to be a commercial fisherman, and I used to be a Marine Patrol deputy, and we use those Mercury motors. Do you like those? And he just smiled at me. You know what he said? He said, well, I got a good place where you can buy a boat if you need one. So I learned real quickly, and I had no idea it was the same Bobby that owned Noble Marina. So anyway, you guys had an amazing father who also was an amazing businessman. And all I saw was that side of him. I didn't see the driven side. I didn't see the aggressive businessman. But I can imagine the two coming together. And I think God's grace was seen at the end of his life. I got to experience that. Thank you for that honor. I don't want to take a lot of time, but I think it's appropriate that as we celebrate this amazing life, this man, and an imperfect life, right, like every human being, as we celebrate that in Bobby, we remember him, I want to take a look at another man who lived a life that nobody else here or in human history could match, and that's Jesus Christ. I just want to spend a few moments talking about what happened on the cross. And I know we have a mixed group here. I don't know what your spiritual backgrounds are, but regardless of what that is, I think you'll appreciate. And when we look at the life of Jesus and the things he said prior to his death, just hours before he died on that cross, it can give us a lot of hope in dealing with loss, as well as looking forward at our own lives. So going over the things that Christ said on the cross, the first thing he said in the Gospel of Luke is, Father, forgive them, for I know not what they do. For they know not what they do. Jesus said this while he had nails through his arms and through his feet, and he had just been flogged and tortured. And the point is, he put his attention towards the people that were abusing him, that were mistreating him, that were actually putting him to death. And instead of thinking about himself, he knew that they needed forgiveness, and he knew that his death and resurrection would provide that. And that's what his prayer was while he died. The second thing he said was to one of the two men that were on either side of him. There were 3 crosses, as you know. One of the men, and they were both criminals, they deserved the crucifixion. And one of the men was mocking Jesus. He was spitting out insults and cussing. And he looked over at Jesus and he said, "If you're the Christ, then why don't you save yourself? Get off of that cross and save us in the meantime." I mean, it's kind of a logical thing to say, but very selfish and cruel. The man on the other side, who also had deserved death, looked over at the one who had just insulted Christ, and he said, "Who are you to say that? You and I deserve what we're getting, but this man is innocent." And then that man who said that looked at Jesus and he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And what Jesus looked at him and he said, "Truly I say to you that today you will be with me in paradise." And I'm telling you, that is one of the most powerful things that's impacted my life, because that same thing is being said to all humans, including us today. No matter where we are, what our past is, what we regret, what we feel like we can't clean out of our lives, that promise is for us right now. So I just invite you to take that with you and know that you can turn to him at any time, and in a moment, he forgives us. The third thing he said was this. His mother, Mary, was viewing him from on the ground, which I can't imagine. There were others there too, but there was also one of his disciples, and Jesus looked down at the 2 of them, and this is what he said. "Woman," to his mom, "behold your son." And then he looked at the disciple and he said, "Behold your mother." And it says in the scripture, from that day forward, that disciple took her into his home. Now that warms me, because I see that the Son of God, who had the power to get off of that cross, to blast those soldiers out of the way, drive demons out, as he voluntarily gave his life, he was so practical that he cared about the life of his mom. So whether you're Catholic or some other faith tradition, you can know that the Jesus that died for us cared about his mom. And I see that with this family. I see you caring about your mom, and you cared about your dad, and she's being taken well care of. Praise God for that. The fourth thing Jesus said was, "I thirst." You know, that's pretty practical. I say that from time to time, and I don't know what he thirsted for, but I imagine it was dehydration. And he's showing us his humanity. He's showing us that he was a human being, but at the same time he was the Son of God, and he had needs like we do. There's a scripture in Hebrews that says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one in every respect who has been tempted as we are, but yet he's without sin." So when we look to Jesus, we can see not only the Son of God, who's almost unapproachable in his perfection and his lack of sin, but we see a man who felt pain, got thirsty, was concerned about his mom, and cared about the people around him. And that helps us make a connection that no other religious philosophy offers, that, where God came down into earth and connected with us in a way that we could see he understood what we're going through. The fifth thing he said was this: my God, why have you forsaken me?" And this is one of the tough ones, because while he was hanging on that cross, can you imagine the father looking down and seeing his son dying, bleeding out, giving his life for the world voluntarily? And it just shows us that Jesus felt that rejection and separation from his own Father. The sixth thing that Jesus said before he died, and there's one more after this. The sixth thing is John 19, verse 30, "It is finished." Jesus finished the work that the Father had given him to do. Bobby finished his work on earth. One of you daughters mentioned that. I think a couple of you kind of mentioned it in different words, but he finished his work. He worked hard. He took care of his family. I'm sure he made a lot of mistakes, but he loved you all, and that legacy is going to continue. Jesus had a mission as well, and it was to come to the earth and give his life so that the human race would have forgiveness of sins. And he did that. And when he said it's finished, he gave us that message. It's over. I did it, Dad. Finally, the last thing he said was this: Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. I commend my spirit. And then he died. Jesus willingly gave up his spirit. Willingly, that's what matters. And like I said before, he didn't have to stay on that cross. He could have got right off it like the thief told him to. But he willingly gave it up because his love demanded that he would, so that we could be forgiven. As you spend the rest of this service and go into this day, just thinking about Bobby, feeling the emptiness and maybe smiling with the joyful moments that you remember. I want to leave you with one short story. And right after that, Becky's going to give us another song. There was a dad who spent a lot of time watching TV. I was thinking about the Super Bowl the other night. And his little daughter came up to him and kept bothering him, and she was wanting him to bring her down to the candy store and get a candy bar. Finally, frustrated at her persistence, he reached over and he picked up a magazine, started thumbing through it, and he found a picture of the world in it. He clipped it out, and he cut it in several pieces like that, tiny little pieces, and he handed the pieces to the little girl, along with a roll of Scotch tape, and he said, "Put this together, and when you have it looking like the world again, I'll take you to get the candy bar." Well, thinking he had pulled a good one over her, and he sat back down and got totally absorbed in the game. However, after about 7 or 8 minutes, the little girl came back holding the picture of the world taped together nice and neatly. He couldn't believe it. How'd she do it? And he said, "How did you do it, dear?" And she said, "Well, Daddy, I noticed on the back of the picture, when you were cutting it up, there was a picture of Jesus being put on the cross. And when I put him in the right place, the world all came back together as well." As he turned off the TV, he and his little girl headed out the door, and he recalled those words: when you put Jesus in the right place, the world comes back together as well. We can go today remembering that. Remember that the cross was for us. It was for Bobby, and it was for those that went before us, and Jesus is alive today. Thank you, folks. I want to invite Becky to provide us with Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to feel, and grace my fears relieve. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. Like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. The earth will soon dissolve like snow, the sun forever to shine. But God who calls me here below will be forever mine, will be forever mine. You are forever mine.
The family has a video of Bobby's life that if you enjoy, and then we'll close.
A child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking for I knew it. And as he grew, he'd say, I'm gonna be like you, Dad. You know I'm gonna be like you. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll
She sure has been. She done a damn good job of it. I don't know how she done it.
Patience.
Especially with all these kids now.
time then. My son turned 10 just the other day. He said, thanks for the ball, Dad, come on, let's play. Can you teach me to throw? I said, not today, I got a lot to do. He said, that's okay, and he walked away, but his smile never dimmed. It said, I'm gonna be like him, yeah, you know I'm gonna be like him.
Well, this is beautiful. I mean, you know, you gotta be a God, you know.
Yes, there is.
Who in the hell would ever think there couldn't be a God with all this here?
Be like him, yeah, you know I'm gonna be like him. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, the little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then. Well, he came from college just the other day. So much like a man, I just had to say, son, I'm proud of you. Can you sit for a while? He shook his head and he said with a smile, what I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later, can I have
she'll always be spoiled. Because everybody's going to love her to death, you know. Especially her papa, mama, grandmama. Oh, your father would have been ecstatic too. Well, he, no way in the world he'd ever believe what happened overall. I mean, there's no way in the world I ever believed it happened. I was just so happy to get Robert, you know. And his mother was right there with me. She was a great lady.
Well, my mother was there for Mackenzie, but she never met Chloe.
But she was there.
He walked away, but his smile never dimmed. Said, I'm gonna be like him. Yeah, you know I'm gonna be like him. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. The little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then.
Yeah, I'm his third wife.
Me and Rosie got married, and I said, that's
No
it,
more
we don't need
kids.
no more kids. She said, how about if I give you a boy? I said, well, now that, had a boy.
Oh.
Had a boy.
I promised him I'd give him a
Wait.
boy, but back then,
Yeah.
it was really blind. You didn't know what you were giving.
And he's 30 what?
He's 47.
47. And I was happiest fella in the world to get that boy. But I couldn't have been no happier now.
With all these girls. So many girls.
You got a boat? You have a boat? That's what I'll do, sell a boat. I need the money.
Well, that I don't have. I wish I did.
Boat business has put us through how many years?
42 years.
42 years.
Going on 43 next month.
Yeah.
43.
In September.
Yes.
And it'll keep going.
Yeah.
Down the earth.
We hope.
She's oh. Congratulations.
I hope you feel better soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, me too, honey. Thanks.
His head and they said with a smile, what I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later, can I have them, please? And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. You know we'll have a good time then. I've long since retired, my son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said I'd like to see you if you don't mind. He said I'd love to, Dad, if I can find the time. You see, my new job's a hassle and the kids are the flu, but it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's been sure nice talking to you. And as I hung up the phone, it occurred to me he'd grown up just like me. My boy was just like me. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. We're gonna have a good time then.
See if that one works. Okay, well, you join me in prayer as we close, and the funeral director will come up and dismiss us. Heavenly Father, I thank you again for this short time together where we can reflect on and celebrate a long, meaningful, and precious life. As these folks say goodbye to Bobby today, Lord, it's not over. Please stir the memories in them that are good. Help them to let go of the things that are not, and that forgiveness and celebration would characterize their days. Thank you for Jesus who died on the cross for us, and I pray that you keep us safe as we depart from here. In Jesus' name, amen. Rosita wanted me to tell you, too, that there's going to be lunch at their house after the graveside service.